Hey everyone, good evening. Thanks for joining again. I can see already like 250 plus people have joined us, and I believe like a lot of us, a lot of others are going to join us shortly. So thanks for joining. I hope everybody is well with you and your family. Everybody is safe and all. Uh, Before we start this discussion, right? What I want to I want to set the context for the session, and it's important to set the context so that you can actually know what you are getting in which part of the session, right? So first of all, see, product-led growth is a new concept, right? People have been doing product-led growth for last 10, 12 years, to say, but it is being talked in Indian ecosystem for last 1 or 2 years. Before that, we did a lot of performance marketing, digital marketing, and all that. But now we have actually started seeing value in product-led growth, right? So first I'm going to cover what product-led growth is. I'll use the short form for it, by the way, like PLG. It's much easier to pronounce, so I'm going to use that. So what PLG is, and then what I've tried to do in this session is actually create a framework to think around PLG. Because when we think around PLG, one of the big questions that I often get from peers and like PMs who are just joining the product management teams is how is it this different from developing simple products, right? That we build like search recommendations and all those products. How is it different from those products, right? And that is what I've tried to do in this session, which is like after introducing what PLG is, I'm going to put a framework around it, which is like there are some foundations of PLG and then there are boosters of PLG. And for most of this session, what we are going to discuss is the case studies across the world and also like some of the case studies from Flipkart. The reason to pick case studies from Flipkart is because we have the right context. We have seen like some of the products that we have built and how they have led growth. So because we know the nuances of such products that we have built, it is actually like we have a lot of conviction around the case studies that we are going to share. But we will actually share case studies more from outside the world so that the conversation does not, get focused around a certain area of product development. So with that context, let me move forward, right? So very quickly, I'll introduce myself. I currently lead conversational AI products at Flipkart. And my experience with product and growth has been that I have built both 0 to 1 as well as products at scale. And that has given me a good insight into what it takes to build new products, which is like when you don't have any users, you're struggling for any kind of revenue or user growth. Two kind of products where you have like 10 million daily active users, 50 million daily active users. Like what does it take to build growth in both stages, right? So that's one. And the second thing that I've been doing for last couple of years, last 1.5 years actually, is I have started this newsletter around product strategy and growth, which is the Growth Catalyst. And through this newsletter, I'm more learning, by the way, than kind of putting knowledge out in the world. I actually have picked all the topics of growth, specifically around product-led growth. And I have written like some 40, 50 posts around it. And that has given me some sense and some semblance of like what people are looking for when they think about growth, what are the major questions they have, and like how to build a good framework around growth, right? Before we move forward, right, please use Q&A feature for the question submission. And like for others who are not submitting questions, please go and check the Q&A. If you find a good question, just upvote it. Because of the limited time, we won't be able to pick all the questions. So the ones that resonate with the audience most, we'll be able to pick it, right? So just a request from my side, and we can start, right? So this is a Paul Graham line. Like Paul Graham, he is a founder and investor out of Silicon Valley, and he has written very, very good essays around product and growth. And this is my favorite line from one of his essays where he talks about startup equals to growth, where he says that the only essential thing for a startup is growth. If you don't grow as a startup 10% month on month, week on week, everything else will fall. Like you'll get no funding, you'll get no team building, etc., etc. Right? And I feel that for startups, definitely for people in startups, this definitely is a code to follow for this session. But even for people who don't come from startup background, I would say that, new products are similar to startups. if you build a new feature, if you build a new product and it is not getting growth, even if you work in a bigger company, you will find it hard to kind of build a strong team, big team around it, because the funding almost always comes down to which is the product which is adding a lot of value to the users, right? Uh, so that's the uh, context setup for growth. Now PLG is a I would say a sub function of growth, right? It comes under growth umbrella, but it's slightly different from the way we understand growth in traditional industries. So in traditional industries, what happens is you have there are two major things that we talk about in growth. One is the user side, which is the marketing actually ensures that your product is getting to the users in the end, right? So marketing is responsible for user side growth, and then business or sales is responsible for revenue growth, right? So in the traditional businesses, this marketing and business actually solve for user and revenue growth, the two pillars of growth, right? But product-led growth actually is putting the software in between, and kind of saying that rather than solving it through performance marketing, rather than solving it through feet on street sales, I'm going to solve the problems of growth through software. And because software is such a scalable thing, right? It actually has a lot of appeal to it. Now, the biggest case study around growth is actually product-led growth is Facebook. And this is one story that actually got me very excited about growth when I first I was leading growth at Upgrad, which is like back in 2008, Facebook actually hit a growth wall at 80 to 100 million monthly active users. And this, if you remember it well, right, this was an economic meltdown time, and it was a difficult time for all the businesses across the world. And at the same time, what had also happened in the past is Skype and other social network companies, they had hit the same growth wall. And Facebook had this challenge because people both inside and outside were talking whether this is the ceiling of a social network. Like whether a social network will eventually being able to break this ceiling or not is a question, debatable question, because in the past nobody has done it. And now again, Facebook has also gone to that level and it is saturated, right? And then they did something which possibly is the biggest strategic call any company has taken, which is Mark Zuckerberg actually said that we won't focus on monetization, and we'll just focus on building a lot of software features that can enable growth. And then you see features like, auto tagging photos. This came from Facebook, right? And this meant that you had some friends, you tagged them, they would come back to Facebook, they would comment, they would like, and the whole engagement lever is built. The second thing was people you may know. It's the most successful feature of growth in Facebook, because in a social network, I think the moment you tell people that these are the people you may know, and they can actually add them as friends, the network effect actually multiplies. And we'll talk more about network effect later on. But for now, right, people you may know actually lets you add friends and kind of create a very strong network on Facebook, which is again very good for retention and user growth for Facebook. And the third thing was a platform approach, right? So far, Facebook was playing on the social network thing, right? And then they actually said that, okay, let's engage users using games. And the mindset actually shifted from a social network company to a marketplace company, where you have games on one side, users on the other side, and game developers on the third side. So all in all, you have created a platform rather than a product. And on this platform, game developers can come and build games, and users can actually play those games. And this actually kind of led to a lot of good monetization. So if you look at like, this is whole like that era of 2008 to 2012, when Facebook built so many like features, they did a lot of software dev, and they actually kind of crossed that wall of growth, right? Now that we have established, through one case study, how it can actually help, like PLG can help companies at such scale, let me introduce a framework that we are going to talk through the rest of this session. And I actually have named it as foundation and boosters. And the reason for that is growth is very, very synonymous to rocket ship, right? Like some of the SpaceX fans there might relate to the image here, but it's a lot like you have to build the foundation for the rocket ship first, and then you can launch the rocket ship. and then the fuel works as a booster and all that, right? And after a while, the gravity stops kind of working, and then the rocket ship can go on and on. But without the foundation, if you just apply the boosters, it won't work. So first, I think for growth, we have to focus on foundation, and then we will come to boosters. And the first foundation is on acquisition, right? Are you building for the right customers? Have you identified the right customers, and are you building for them? That's the first thing. The second thing is, are you onboarding them in the right manner? Which is like, are you creating a new user experience, which is very, very frictionless? And we'll talk more about this also. The third is, now that you have gotten the right set of people and you have actually onboarded them on your product, are you able to retain them? Which is like, are they coming back again and again because they saw some value in the product, right? So these are the foundations, 3 foundations and 3 boosters. The first booster is something that people love, right? Which is referral. And referral is nothing but giving users a reason to tell it to other people. Now, there are bad reasons to do that, which we'll discuss, and there are good reasons to do that, right? And we have to differentiate between good and bad reasons for people to tell it to other people. The second booster is growth loops, right? Which is like, you create a virtuous loop, which is something like, you have some money, you put this money to investments, it creates more money, you put it back, right? So can you create a loop that can accelerate growth, right? Which is like more people coming, bringing more, even more people, and so on and so forth. So growth loop, referral is just one kind of growth loop, but you can actually build very strong growth loops in your product beyond referral. And the last one is gamification. I have actually built like gaming and games platform for a couple of years in my career. And one of the reasons I wanted to do it is because games are probably the purest consumer tech products out there. People play games because they love them, right? And if a PM can understand why people love them, right? If we can understand the user psychology, and we can also understand the game design principles, because see, on these principles, there is a $300 billion industry out there just for gaming. It's bigger than video. It's bigger than a lot of like smaller industries in entertainment. So can we kind of use the user psychology and game design principles that people have learned in games to actually deliver product like PLG, right? So these are foundations and boosters. And now we'll get into details of these, right? So let me start with the first foundation, right? And I know you might have some frameworks. See, we all actually reason from first principles, and at least I try to reason from first principles. I cannot say I actually think from first principles, but we all try to find and build for the right customers. That's the first tenet that any marketing or growth or product team actually gets. That's the first mandate that we get. And it's very, very essential to actually hit the right customers, because once you have figured that out, it's very easy to go and talk to them, find out the problems, and actually build for them. But if you somehow went to the wrong customers, or if you went to build for all the customers out there in the market, you will fail, right? That's a recipe for failure, either a wrong customer or all customers. Building for all customers is not different than building for the wrong customer, right? So finding and building for the right customer is very, very important. Now, those of you who have attended MBA classes might have seen like 4 P's of marketing, right? Like product placement, pricing, promotion. And the way they work is basically, these are the 4 things you have to think about the product. I'm going to give you a more evolved framework. And the framework works like this. You have the product, which is the product here. You have the market, you have the pricing model, and you have the promotion channel. So channel means Facebook, Google, and all that. The rest 3, you kind of understand. The idea is not to think about them separately. The idea is to evaluate fit between all these 4 things. So there is product market fit, which is overused terms in PM circles. There's product promotion fit, there's product pricing model fit, and so on and so forth. And to better explain this, let me take a quick example of online courses, right? So there are 2 companies which kind of tackle, which it looks like they're building the courses for similar kind of audience, whereas they're not, right? So the one is basically your Udacity. The second one is your Udemy, right? And if you look, the product market fit for these 2 companies, right? So the first question you ask is there a need for online course for working professionals or students? And you'll realize that there is a need for both of them, right? Now, Udacity serves working professionals and Udemy solves more of students. It has very like small ticket size courses and all that, right? So both have built different products. Both are online courses, but Udacity is at $150 per month. Udemy is $10 per month, right? So different pricing models, different market, different promotion channels and everything. And as you ask these questions, right, product promotion fit, where can you find these people? Now, Udacity knows that students cannot pay $150 per month usually unless they give them a scholarship. So they will go to places where professionals are there, like LinkedIn. They'll conduct events and do all those things. They'll give free trials and all. But Udemy knows that anybody, be it working professional or students, they can actually take their course because it's just $10. So they will use Facebook, Google search, and all these different channels to actually find these people. So that is a product promotion fit. Product pricing model fit, again, will people pay for $150 for a course or $10 for a course? The answer is $10 for a course because it's much cheaper. But when do they like pay $50, $150 for a course? When you add more things to it. And which is why you see in Udacity, they offer placement support. They offer to evaluate your assignments. They offer to actually help you out connecting to companies and all, right? And all that added together, that package is $150 per month, not $10 per month. So that's how they built a different product for a different market and using different channels, right? Then there is market pricing model fit. Are people capable of paying that? The answer to that is yes. The people are like the different TGs are capable of paying that. And then pricing model promotion. Now here is a question, right? Can you sell a product through Facebook ads, which is like $150 for a month? For 3 months, it's $500. You possibly can't. And which is why you see Udacity goes for a free trial. And then they say you experience the product and then we will sell it to you. Versus Udemy directly does not give you a free trial. It asks you to directly purchase, right? So even while picking channels and how to convert the users, you'll use this. And then finally, the question is the market available on the channels that you're going after, right? So if you use this fitment criteria across these things, I think you will come up with how different companies in the same market that look the same have actually positioned themselves for different TGs, and they have built slightly different product, but which actually matters for that TG, right? So that's the acquisition for you. And if you go back in the broader world, right, if you see Google's vision for next billion users and what they are building, you'll see things like Google Lens. Why Lens? Because these people will not be able to articulate the object they are seeing sometimes while they are purchasing something or while they are typing something. So Lens actually helps them kind of just click the picture and figure out what it is. The articulation gap is solved. Google Assistant. Why? Because people are not very comfortable with navigating through a lot of things. So give them an assistant which will actually do those things for them, right? And there is Cormo Jobs. Cormo Jobs is more of like blue collar job marketplace for blue collar professionals. If you see all these products, they are actually solving the problem for next billion users. The first billion user is already there with Google. How do they get the next billion user? Is by building products that specifically solves problems for them. And the reason they're building this is because they realize the right set of customers that is out there. Even in Flipkart, for example, right, we realize that the first 100 million users in India possibly speaks English and does not have an English tax. But if you go to the next 300, 400 million users who want to purchase, because Flipkart is delivering value and selection for people to actually make transactions online, you'll realize that without building specific products for them that actually helps them purchase, they will not be able to use Flipkart. And which is why you see voice search or vernacular, which is launching Flipkart app into 5 different languages, is actually helping bridge that gap, because these people can now read, they can actually tap on voice search, they can just speak, right? So basically building for the right customers, figuring out who the right customers is the most important and the most important thing that you can do to build the foundation of PLG, right? Next, coming to, onboarding, right? Onboarding is again a misnomer, because at least for the first couple of years of me as a PM, I used to think this on the screen that you're seeing is what onboarding is, which is like If I'm going through a travel website, like it will give me 3 images, which will tell me 3 things that this app can do: plan a trip, book a flight, let's travel. Over the years, I've realized onboarding is not at all what I used to think is. Onboarding, in fact, is a lot about delivering aha moments for the user. Now, aha moment is, I think you might intuitively get it, but I've just put it there so that there's no confusion. So aha moment is a moment of sudden insight or discovery, which is like user is going through your app and they'll be like, oh, this is also there. So it's a sudden insight, or they suddenly discovered something that they love. And that is the aha moment. So this aha moment, how do you get new users to experience it, is onboarding. And that is the definition to follow, by the way. I think you should not strict yourself with first session or first few screens, or like getting them signed up, or all of that is secondary. The primary objective for a, let's say, an onboarding PM or an onboarding team is to get users to experience that value that app can deliver as quickly as possible. If that is not happening, then the job of onboarding is not done, because you haven't onboarded them. You have just got them to sign something. You have just taken them through few pictures and like few toasts and all that. That is not onboarding at all. And I'll put some examples, right, to just make the point. So for example, Tinder, the onboarding for Tinder is finding a match, right? ShareChat, if you see the way ShareChat started, is basically we are giving you images that you can share on your WhatsApp, like good morning wishes and all that. Over time, they built like regional first interface for users, and they added video and all the other things that kind of made this an entertainment platform. But if you go to ShareChat, the primary discovery of value happens first because you are asked to select a regional language, and second because you can see some videos and photos that you can like and you can forward. If you don't like and forward that, onboarding is not happening, even if like people are registering for it or doing anything. Unacademy, again, is an app with multiple aha moments depending on multiple user personas. And that there goes second myth of onboarding, which is onboarding has to be more personalized, customized, and the same app can have 5 different aha moments. It does not have to have single aha moment, like single North Star metric. So Unacademy has, like, you can find popular teachers, you can watch videos which are free to watch, you can understand a concept you are struggling through using one of these videos, and either of this happens, and depending on which phase you are in or what stage, what your current mindset is, you can find your aha moment. And for Swiggy, for example, so the top 3 products are mostly like online. The fourth one is online to offline, right? For Swiggy, I think it's when you are hangry, which is hungry and angry, and you get your food quickly in 30 minutes and you actually get to experience that tasty food, which is warm and all. That is your aha moment, the aha moment. And that is where the onboarding stops, because before that, you haven't experienced what Swiggy is, right? And if you see, I have put these into increasing order of complexity for onboarding. Like finding a match is just an algorithm. ShareChat, it's content curation and creation. Unacademy is much harder. Like you are creating a marketplace, you're bringing teachers and all that. Swiggy is bridging the gap between online and offline world, right? So onboarding will get complicated as you move to more complicated products. And we have some learnings from Flipkart to share as well, right? So for example, what are the 3 things that people wanted in India for a commerce platform to deliver, right? If you think of it, the first was, I want to find what I'm looking for, which was the selection, and I want to get it in cheapest cost, or like I want to get it fast enough, actually, not fastest. So selection and pricing was first thing. The second was trust and affordability, because it is involving money. A lot of consumers that we know, like a lot of people in tier 3, tier 4 India, they are wary of putting their hard-earned money onto an app, because they're like, what if I'm not able to get it back? So trust and affordability becomes very, very important. And the third is returns and refund. What if I don't like what I want? And if you look in the offline world, that's how the commerce works, which is like you go, the shopkeeper shows you selection. They also tell you this is the best price you will get. They will return, like you can give them cash. So there is trust that cash is exchanging hands. And there is also a return policy. You can go back to the shopkeeper and say, I didn't like this, take it and give me the cash back immediately. So all that convenience has to be brought into the online world to give people that aha moment of online shopping, right? So which is why, if you see, right, to solve the problem of onboarding over the years, Flipkart has done a lot of things, which is initially it started with the mega store, which is like solve for the selection and solve for the pricing. But then as you expand further into the market, there's a trust issue. So you introduce cash on delivery, which is like you get it first and then give me the cash, because that's how it happens in offline world. You get the item and then you put the cash in the shopkeeper's hand. And then we also kind of launched the debit card EMI, because in India, credit card is not like credit card is limited to 40 million consumers. Like online shopping is not limited to 40 million consumers. So we said that, okay, let's introduce debit card EMI, because debit card is a much bigger market. And then there is returns and refunds. Here also, like communicating that value prop that you will immediately get refund within 24 hours and so on and so forth. All that actually helps, because it eases out and takes people out of the anxiety they're in, right? So these are like, yeah, a few things that we know from our experience. Now, if you want a framework for onboarding, I think I'm just quickly going to cover that, which is like, see, onboarding should be progressive. It should not be 5 different, screens in one go. Think of games like they onboard you by you doing few things, and they actually create animations to onboard you. So it should be progressive, which is like one by one, you are going to put onboarding steps. The second is it should be personalized, and it does not need to be very, very heavy ML algorithm. You can personalize by giving people the right language options, the right location options and all that. You have to customize it, right? So it has to be customized and personalized. And the third is you have to use psychological nudges, right? And this is my favorite part, because I am very, very interested in psychology. And what I mean by this is, think of this page, this screen, right? There are some psychological nudges built into it. And the first one is association. When you say largest online higher education company, people associate largest with good, largest with trust, because the largest companies that you know on the planet or in India, you actually trust them, Tata, Reliance and all that. The second is social proof. When we are putting 55,000 plus learners in these courses, that's giving you confidence that, oh, 55,000 people are actually paying and learning from here. So let me also pay and learn from here. So that's the second thing. And the third thing that you see is authority, which is like there is world-class faculty here, there is like placement team and all that. So the moment I say that there are professors who are 10 years of experience, 20 years of experience teaching this course, you actually associate authority with good things, right? So you actually start trusting this platform. So 3 P's of good onboarding are progressive, personalized, and psychological nudges. If you use all these 3, you can actually create quite a good like onboarding experience. But caution there, because no size will fit all, right? And you have to create a differentiated experience for different kind of products. So there are some low ARPU products, which is like, let's say FB, right? If we look at the public numbers, like $30 to $40 average revenue per user is what Facebook's ARPU is. Then there are Netflix and Dropbox kind of models where you get like 150, 160, 200 kind of $200 from users in a year, right? And then there are Salesforce and SAP and all these like SaaS platforms which have high ARPU, and there it can be like $1,000 to $100,000. Like the ticket size can be anything. And what you realize is the higher the ARPU, higher the amount you're asking. ARPU is by the average revenue per user. Higher the ARPU, the more information and assurance is needed to convert the user. I won't give $1,000 easily. I can give $10 easily. Like I won't mind much. And which is why you see the onboarding for these apps are drastically different. Like onboarding for Facebook kind of app is, there's no assistance. It's a simple sign up. You can use your phone number, you can use your email. But if you go to Netflix, they will offer you a free trial, because they know that $150 out of pocket is not easy. So they will give you a free trial. Like e-commerce companies will provide you cash on delivery and all that. And if you go to the bigger things like Salesforce and SAP, where like $1,000 to $100,000 is what people need to spend, they will do a demo. They will give you human support. They will give you share some integration costs and all. because these are very large ticket sizes and the information and assurance needed to buy the product is much, much higher. So just think of the ARPU spectrum when you're taking a call around onboarding for your product, and feel free to use this. Now the third foundation of growth, which is retention for new users, right? So retention is like the soul of the product. The reason is because if you don't have a retention, it's very similar to a bucket where you're putting a lot of water and the whole water is going down from the bottom because there's no bottom. So in absence of good retention, the products will fail. There is no two questions about it. And the mistake, however, that I see a lot of teams doing is they actually measure all users retention, which is like how many people came today, and of these, how many people came tomorrow. That actually does not paint the right picture. So first thing I want you to focus on is on the new user retention. Like 100 people came today for the first time, how many people came tomorrow? That is a retention number that we are going to use for the discussion here, right? And what you'll realize in retention, I think there is very simple graph that will actually tell you a very good thing about your product market fit. So if you have the retention curve, which is flattening over time, right? Which is like it went down, like just this blue curve, it went down, but then it flattened, which means that some of the people, some of the 100 people who joined the app on day 0 are actually continuing after day 30, after day 60, after day 90, which means that some of the people that we are getting are actually getting value. It's always a good indicator of product market fit. And the reason for that is because then you know there is a subset of people that you are bringing on your app who are actually getting value, which means that you can actually find out who these people are and you can do your marketing efforts to bring more such people. So your retention will improve over time. But suppose you have a red curve, which is if the curve is not flattening, it is actually going down. So then what happens is you can keep adding new users, but after let's say 8 days, 10 days, everybody is going out of the funnel, which means that you have to bring new users continuously for multiple months, multiple years, and you'll require a lot of money to do that, right? Which is why flattening the curve has to be the leading indicator of product market fit. And I think probably a good case study in this regard was Branchout. So Branchout, just let me give some context. So Branchout actually started as a professional network built on the top of Facebook. So this is back in 2011 when Facebook was breaking the wall of growth and everybody had very, very high hopes from Facebook. And what Branchout did was basically they built a social network on top, professional network on top of Facebook, which is like, suppose today I want to join Flipkart and I don't know anyone in Flipkart, like first degree connection in LinkedIn. I can still see a friend who is friend with somebody else in Flipkart. So a friend of friend kind of network can actually help me find a referral or a job. And this was their insight. And they said that we will use Facebook to create this network and we will actually beat LinkedIn when it comes to professional network. Now, this was their growth from Jan to April, which is like 1 million, 4 million, 8 million, 13 million in 4 months. Like they have grown like 13x in monthly active users. And on top of this growth, they actually raised $49 million. Like back in 2011, that was a big amount. And the way they were able to build this growth is basically Facebook didn't at that time actually let you invite friends for some events or some page, right? And they actually asked the people who joined these pages to invite all of their friends. And when you are sending invitation to all of your friends, some of them will come on the app, right? But the trouble with this approach is if you don't have a great retention, this is the curve for the next 4 months, which is like it moved from 12 to 2 million MAU from April to July 2012, right? And the reason for that is Facebook also has a limit of use, how many users, how many invites can you get, right? Like at best, you can get the visibility to 100 million users of Facebook and you can bring like 10%, 20%, 30% of them. But if they don't stick after a month, the whole thing falls down and you don't have anything else left to do. And which is why like they got sold in some $5 million or so. I don't remember the exact number, but yeah, this is a typical case study in retention. And this is a typical mistake that I've seen teams making again and again, right? The last thing to cover in retention, and after this, we'll go to boosters, which is like, once you have figured out these 3 things, how do you boost the retention on your platform? It's various platforms have different, levers for retention. For example, commerce platform have loyalty constructs, which is like super coins we have built on Flipkart, or something like buyback guarantee, which was like, if you buy a smartphone, we will give you a buyback guarantee after 1 year or 2 year, once you have used the phone. Now that in itself is a like loyalty construct, where I have bought this phone from Flipkart. I will go back, use it for a year. I'll come back again when I need to buy my next phone, and I'll buy it again on Flipkart, right? Very, very successful in terms of bringing back users and creating retention for those users, right? So loyalty constructs work very well for commerce platform, which is why you see airlines and all these different companies using it. But what about productivity or fitness platforms, right? Like Strava is there. For them, goals and challenges work, because productivity is goals and challenges, meeting those goals, getting something, doing something better with my day and all that, right? So they work well with Strava kind of platform, which is why they ask you to set a goal 100 kilometers in a month, and then you'll keep using Strava to achieve that goal. So they work there very well. And then there is a third thing, which is very, very, so there is this book by Nir Eyal, Hooked, right? Which is a favorite, which became a darling for product managers back in 2015-16. It talks about habit forming loops, right? So habit forming and network effects do work, by the way, and they have worked for some of the biggest companies out there, and which is why I understand the fascination for those. But yeah, we have to understand that attention platform is where habit forming loops actually work. Think Airbnb, habit forming will not work. Think Strava, to some extent it can work. Think Flipkart, habit forming will not work, right? Like, so retention approach has to be different for different platforms, and that is something to keep in mind. So just summarizing everything, right? So the most important is retention. No product will succeed without a good retention. You have to flatten the curve. The second is identify the aha moments and get them in front of users while onboarding, and don't stop without delivering them to the users, onboarding. The third is bring only the right consumers, doing the pricing, channel, market, product fit analysis. Do it one time with your teams and identify the right TG. And this is like decreasing order of importance. See, if you don't have retention, onboarding and acquisition will not help. If you don't have onboarding, acquisition will not help. And acquisition is acquisition. So just tackle them in the decreasing order of importance. Now we are going to cover boosters of PLG, right? And just doing a quick time check. Okay. So boosters of PLG, retention is the first booster, and it's the holy grail of growth. But mind you that not all retention is great. For example, referral, not retention. Not all referral is great. A great referral product has 4 attributes. One, it banks on the fact that your product is good enough that people will tell other people. The second is incentives should lead to more usage of the product. Think Dropbox. They gave you 2 GB free. They didn't give you 10 rupees, right? Makes it easy to refer, which is like you build like ways to share on WhatsApp and all those links. And the fourth is you have to make it easy for referrer to track the incentives. If any of the 4 criteria don't meet, you miss the growth that you can derive from referral, right? And a good example is Airbnb, actually, which is like, if you see, these are 2 versions of Airbnb referral product, which is like, first was invite your friends, get $25. But the second copy was give your friends $25 to travel. The second copy is more altruistic. It's, more like it makes you feel good when you invite your friends. And with the second one, they also made some changes, which is like, what they did was they created Gmail import, like you can import your contacts and you can send the referral. So they made it easy to kind of do referral. So make it easy, incentive leading to the same product because the credit is for travel. Banks on the fact that Airbnb is used by people and they're getting value out of it, and they made it easy. Because of this, they actually saw, like, from one version to other, they saw 900% year-on-year growth for the first time in the booking, right? And obviously this was not the core driver, but this was this is still like one of the biggest driver of growth for Airbnb, and goes on to show, like, when you do the PLG well, I think what it means, right? So referrals is the first thing, which is the booster. The second booster is growth loops, where you invest your output as an input. So One loop can be, think of a loop where new user signs up, user generates content, like something like TripAdvisor, they add some more ratings and reviews and photos. That whole thing is indexed by Google and somebody else is searching for that hotel, it kind of appears to them, right? So in a way, any new user signing up is creating more content and that is leading to better SEO rankings, more users. And this is more of a UGC loop, user content, user generated content loop, right? Example for this is Wikipedia, TripAdvisor, Reddit, Pinterest, Zomato, Yelp, all these actually use UGC loop. The second loop is slightly different, where user signs up, user creates content and also invites more friends. I think you might have thought of the platform already, like Twitter, Facebook, and all, right? Like you create content, but you invite also like more friends, and more friends keep joining on the platform, and this kind of creates a good growth loop. So this is more of UGC plus network effect, which is like you're adding a lot to the network. Example for this is Facebook, Snapchat, ShareChat, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, all these like bigger companies which have gotten more than 1 billion users are actually relying on UGC and network effects, right? So these are growth loops. Now, one caution about growth loop is just because you created a loop does not mean that it will succeed. And an example for that is Yo app. Yo app actually lets you send Yo to your friend. And because you're sending Yo to your friend will join and it will create a growth loop. But Yo didn't succeed. And the reason for that is very clear when we look after the Uber kind of growth loops. So Uber has growth loops superimposing each other, which kind of create a flywheel of growth. It's a separate term, but it's basically multiple growth loops working together actually are like a flywheel. And the reason we call it flywheel is because it's very, very hard to stop a flywheel. And this kind of momentum of growth is again very, very hard to stop. So in Uber, more demand, more people coming in a locality means more drivers will come, which means that you'll get more coverage, like geographic area coverage, because drivers are now going from one place to other, which means faster pickups because more drivers, which means more people will join. If I'm getting an Uber in 2 minutes, why not just Uber, right? So it creates one loop. The other loop is more coverage means more demand, less driver downtime, more earnings for driver, which means that they will be available for a longer period of time, right? So flywheel, if you look at the difference between first and second is the second one actually uses the network effects, economies of scale, because less downtime and more lower prices and all that. Economies of scale, switching cost, because once you have got to Uber as a driver and you've gotten a good rating, why would you switch from Uber, right? And the fourth is brand. So when growth loops lead to either of them or more of them, you actually create a flywheel, and flywheel becomes a moat for you, a defense for you, and no other company can come and break your flywheel, right? It's very, very hard. The last booster is gamification, which is packing delight to provide aha moment. This is my favorite topic, by the way. Now, what we have discussed aha moments, right? But what happens when you make delightful aha moments where people actually feel good or great, or like they actually start feeling something when they're using your product, right? And you can see this like on the left side, I have Candy Crush, right? Where you see the streaks, streak is very simple. You start on day 1, you come on day 2, you get some reward, you come on day 3. So you're creating a streak, which is a chain of number of days you actually visited, let's say Candy Crush. And the second, on the right is actually Snapchat. Snapchat actually created streaks with your friends, where like you can create a streak with your friend. How many days did you talk to them? And it's very beautiful because see, in friendship, we take pride in how connected we are with our friends. So it's playing on a very, very underlying noble intention and emotion, and which is why it worked. Like streaks was massively successful among teenagers in Snapchat, right? So gamification, if you see here, right, they took a game design principle, which is streaks, and they applied to design product and experience into Snapchat. And that is what gamification is. By the way, gamification is not equal to pointsification. This is a beginner's mistake, which is like pointsification is more around points, leaderboard badges, where you are giving people points, you are taking leaderboard badges. That is not how gamification works. That's basically the initial setup. But gamification will work only when the 3 criteria are met, right? So you have to create the rules and constraints to make sure that the goals are rewarding for the users. right? Which is like you battle, you get rewards, you then again battle, you get upgrades and all that. So you're creating a reward loop kind of a setup. So goals have to be rewarding for the user. In Snapchat, me talking to a friend is rewarding. Me kind of talking every day is rewarding. So goals have to be rewarding. The second is users get to experience strong emotions, which is to say that I should be happy pinging a friend and talking to a friend and all that, right? I should be sad when I'm not talking to a friend and all that. So users get to experience strong emotions. And the third is the activity is neither too easy nor too hard. And there's a reason for that. If it is too easy, people will get bored. If it is too hard, people will feel anxiety, right? So there is like between challenges and skills as a graph, there is a sweet spot where you actually feel very, very happy and people, that is a state of flow. And you have to design your activities such that you actually meet these three: rewarding, strong emotions, neither too easy nor too hard, right? And then there is aesthetics. Games are visually very appealing. So if you see an app which is visually very appealing, you actually associate good feelings with it. So that's another principle of gamification. And the best example I could possibly come up with is actually like Alipay and Forest. I'll explain you the construct. So what Alipay did was they created a game in their app, and they said that your low carbon behavior, which is like you are walking, you are buying tickets online rather than kind of taking paper out and all that. You do all these things and you track in Alipay, right? And we will give you rewards over time. The rewards are in form of a virtual tree, which is like your tree is growing every day. You do more and more of these activities. And your tree growth kind of depends on these activities. Now, how does this help Alipay? Is because Alipay is a transactional, like just like PhonePe and Google Pay, right? So people, when they're doing online transaction, it is helping Alipay. But at the same time, it is also helping people grow the tree. And they actually add a noble mission to it, which is the moment your tree is ready, we will plant a tree on your behalf in a big area that we have bought through Alibaba, right? And if you see the numbers, right, over 200 million trees is kind of planted. 550 million people actually played. And the surface area of these trees where the trees are planted is almost 2.5x of surface area of Singapore. And all those numbers, right? And add to that, like people have started walking, they are doing online transaction and all that. So all that low carbon behavior is also there. So if you see, this is very rewarding, right? This is beneficial for society and planet. And going back to the three tenets that we said, it is rewarding, it has strong emotions, it has meaning, social influence, ownership, accomplishment. It is also not very difficult because you anyway have to pay, you pay through Alipay. It's not very easy, like walking is not very easy, like you don't get bored with walking and all that, right? So that's how they build gamification. And just to summarize, the boosters of PLG, right? So referral is on the top, growth loops second, and gamification third. The reason for that is, if you see, growth loop is for some products like community products and all, growth loop, it becomes the core of the product. Referral, again, is a very good way to provide growth by just developing a little bit more. Like the development cost for referral is not huge. Gamification, yes, you have to invest a lot of energy and time and development to actually build it. So based on that impact effort kind of, and like what is more beneficial for a product, I will say go for referrals, go for growth loops, and then go for gamification. And just to, this is the last slide, and I'll take some questions after this. See, I think we see a lot of startups don't succeed, and some for the very right reasons and some for wrong reasons, right? And the wrong reasons are usually because we as leaders are not able to decide to do the right thing, which is like building long-term sustainable growth. And on the left, I have, I think, one image from my favorite movie, Dead Poets Society. And on the right, I have one of my, favorite product leader, like Steve Jobs. And both are saying the same thing, which is like in Dead Poets Society, there is this scene where Robin Williams is leaving the school and students are supposed to not to talk to him, but they still stand up on their tables in a live classroom, and they actually this is a gesture from them to kind of tell him how much they appreciated his teaching. So it takes a lot of courage to do the right things, and especially in growth, because you can always go and put money and kind of bring growth and bring MAUs and DAUs and all that. but yeah, have the courage to actually do the right thing, because then over time you will see a very long-term, very sustainable growth, and your product or company will be thankful to you for that. So that would be all from my side. I'll move to the questions. Again, thanks a lot for around like 400 folks attending this session. Yeah. So just picking the question. So Aditya has this question. How do you quantitatively track PLG or simply growth of a product? DAO, WOW, MAU, some other metric ratio, top 3-4 metrics to track. That is a very good question, right? So just give me a moment. See, the growth of the product, I think a way to frame this is the North Star metric of the product, right? Like when it comes to PLG, what's the North Star metric of growth? And you will see like companies moving from 30-day active users to a daily active user to a monthly, like weekly active users. And the reason for that is there is no right formula for it, but there is a right way to think about that. The right way to think about that is how often, based on the product that you have built, how often should people, and take an aspirational value for it, how often should people come and visit your product? For example, if you are an Airbnb PM, how often should people plan trips through Airbnb? The good answer could be month, aspirational could be month, an average answer could be a quarter, because usually in a quarter people do kind of go and go out and with their friends and family and all that, right? So there is this aspirational number, there is this actual number depending on where your product is. Similarly, like if you have a DAU case, which is like a Facebook kind of case, where people come and watch videos daily, in that case, you can pick DAU as your growth metric. WAU, for example, something like a community, right? So in a community, you don't expect people to come daily like Quora. You don't expect people to come daily and check Quora, but they can come once in a while and they can check Quora, right? So WAU becomes more apt for that. So one is this daily active, weekly, monthly. That is the first thing around growth. The second is the value that you are giving to the users. So the value that you are giving to the users could be in terms of time spent, could be in terms of money spent, right? And these are the two indicators. If they're spending a lot of time, you are giving some value. If they're spending a lot of money, you are giving some value. So those are, the second is the value for the consumer. The third is the value for the business, because business is also a stakeholder. So business value could be basically if you're retaining users or improving the retention, that is leading to lower customer acquisition costs. And that could be a value to the business. Or if it is a revenue generating product, the total money spent on the product could be a value to the product. So depending on, these like user value, product, business value, and the third is how often, aspirationally and otherwise, should you kind of expect users to come. So that's how you quantitatively track PLG. The second question is from Abhishek, which is, how do you track user behavior for the user in your website? A very quick answer. Think Mixpanel, Amplitude. All these are like big products. There are web analytics and app analytics products. You can use either them, or you can build an in-house solution. Like something like Flipkart can always build an in-house solution. The third is from PB, which is like, how do you build the founding team for product? It's a very, I'm assuming it's product-led growth. Usually, I think to build the founding team for product-led growth, what you need is people who are very strong with numbers, people who are very, very, heavy on talking to users, because market keeps changing. So very strong on numbers, very heavy talking to users, and then have a very strong bias for action, because growth will take a lot of bias for action to actually do that. Just a minute, I'm checking. Just one thing, just share the feedback for the session. I'll be taking more questions here. I'll take, the questions which are, Hemna has asked this question, which is like, when it's marketplace, say Uber, where the supply is onboarded first, how do you retain them until demand flows? As in demand flow takes time based on supply availability. Okay, that's an amazing question. So all marketplaces have this chicken egg problem, which is like, without supply, the demand will not come, and without demand, the supply will not come, right? And the way to at least solve that problem is by constraining yourself. For example, Uber started by constraining themselves in geographies. They first launched in San Francisco, then they went to other geographies. So you constrain either by geography or by use case, and make sure that in that you have enough supply before the demand comes. And then it will create a virtuous cycle. But the liquidity of the marketplace, which is like how many of people who came to Uber got the rides, and how many of drivers who came to Uber got, let's say, more than 1,000 rupees a day, is very, very important to maintain. And usually you do that by constraining the marketplace first and not launching it across the geographies, across the use cases. I think those are, I think we are already over time. I can take 2 more minutes and then hand it over to Ambika. So just taking one more question. I'm just choosing one question. Rishikesh has this question: how to execute new ideas for acquiring new customers, and that idea may not be liked by old customers. I mean, shall we try on existing customer and build new? That's an interesting thing. So suppose you already have a big consumer base, and now you are building a product which might alienate the older consumer base, but might be useful for the new consumer base. How do you do that? See, usually there is no right approach to this, but two approaches companies usually take. If you see Instagram and all these products, the first approach that they take is they will put it in the product, but they will put it with a lower visibility, because the last thing you want to do is you want to alienate your older customers, right? So just make sure that you don't put a lot of visibility on whatever you are building new. Whatever you are building new. The second thing that companies do is they actually break the product. So they will create a new product entirely if the use case is big enough and if they want to test in the market. Example being like Flipkart recently kind of launched reseller platform called Shopsy. Right now one may say that that could have been done within the app, but given the market and everything, and the product is fundamentally different from what a marketplace like Flipkart is, I think it was a wise call to go ahead with a new app, right? So these are two fundamental approaches. Just don't alienate your old users. That's I think possibly the best advice I have. And I'm sorry, like I would actually, if I had time, I would actually have taken all the questions, but sorry, we are limited by time. I will let Ambika take over and say the last few words.
Deepak, we can actually take a couple of questions if you have time. We can stretch till 6:15.
Sure. I'll take that. So please go and upvote, by the way, like that is how I'm picking the questions, the ones which are voted most. So please go and update if you. So Ankita has this great question, which is like, can you give a failed example of gamification? I think there are multiple examples, like there are some successful examples like Duolingo and all, but almost all of the other apps where you see a lot of points coming in and all that, right, are failed example of gamification. Like wherever you see a leaderboard and the leaderboard does not evoke any emotion in you, that's kind of a failed example of gamification. Wherever you see like some points you get and you start asking, what is the point of this, right? What is the point of getting a point here, is a failed example of gamification. So that is, I don't want to pick specific use cases, but I think if you just think about it a little, I think you'll get a lot of answers for yourself. Abhishek has this question. Abhishek, is it incorrect to say that pricing model and promotion will follow product and market? That's a great question, Abhishek, which is like the pricing model and promotion that you pick have to follow product and market, but sometimes the pricing model fits into the product. I'll give you an example. So suppose you're building an online course, and suppose you're going to build an online course. Now that online course is going to take a lot of energy and time for you. So there is a certain pricing that you have to put on top of that to justify the time you invested and the customer acquisition costs. Now, what can happen is, then when you go to market, the market will be like, no, but I just paid $10 for the course, so the pricing model does not work for me. So that kind of acts as a feedback loop to you, that what else can I add in this product so that my market receives this kind of pricing model. So that is what I mean by, doing fit analysis, because one will actually bring you back to the other, and then you'll do that analysis, you'll change something, then come back to the fit again, and so on and so forth. It's very, very dynamic field that you're playing rather than a then Anirudh has this question, which is, does the impact of onboarding generally last for a short period of time? Should it be the most important thing to take care of? Yeah, Anirudh, the onboarding is probably the best thing that you can do for your product. It will lessen your marketing costs. It will also add to your retention. Onboarding is the bridge between the customer and the value prop of the product. Now, if you break that bridge, the customer cannot go to your product that you have built. So if you ask me honestly, if you have a great product which has good retention for some users, onboarding is probably the highest leverage activity that you can do. And it will not last for a short period of time. It should not last for a short period of time. It should last for as long as it takes for the user to know the value prop of your product, right? And that from there on, the baton is to your product. There on, like, you can just keep retaining the users. Srinivasan has this question, what's the book Deepak just referred? Srinivasan, if you could elaborate this question, maybe I can answer it there. I know I said some book, but I honestly can't remember it. Shubham has this question, how much of this foundation and boosters framework applies to B2B products? So Shubham, great question, right? So for B2B products, actually both of them apply. So for B2B products, if you see, start with foundation, finding the right TG, which is like, are you solving for a small and medium enterprise, or are you solving for an enterprise like Flipkart, which is a great, big enterprise, right? So TG is very important. Your onboarding is very important, which is the reason you actually have success team, which onboards people on your this. You give demo, you give like free trial and all that. Retention, no doubts about that, right? Coming to boosters, where you might have questions, referral works beautifully in enterprise. In fact, referral is how enterprise products grow. Like, because I'm connected to a friend at Zomato, I will tell the friend that, oh, by the way, this is a new thing we are using for user research, and this is working beautifully. Coming to the next one, which is like gamification. Gamification definitely works, because that's the reason you give discounts or you give annual contracts. Annual contract is kind of gamifying that, right? You give an annual contract, you give a discount, people will actually buy it. Why? Because our psychology is geared towards saving something. And similarly, like subscription product work very well with credit card, rather than asking user to actually update payment every month, right? So all of that is actually user behavior and psychology that goes into, Yeah, that book was, by the way, Hooked by Neeriyal, HOOKED. I think Hemant has gracefully put that into the chat, so please check. Anshul has this question, retention being one of the core pillar of growth, still majority of startups focus on acquisition and keep retention secondary. What's the psychology behind that? Before I move on, Ankit, please feel free to, stop me at the time limit, but happy to go ahead otherwise. So Anshul, a great question, right? So retention is a core pillar of growth, but people still focus on acquisition because of two reasons. One, because it's easy. If you have money lying around and if you have to show the MAU growth, it's easy to kind of get more users and show the MAU growth, with the hope that over time you will improve retention. The problem that happens is people keep pushing that for tomorrow, right? So that's the first thing. The second is power of incentives. So the incentives of, let's say, a product or a company is to make the product look good in front of investors, in front of users, in front of everybody. And that's a very core need that we have to serve as PMs and founders. And which is the reason the incentives, if my next funding or next team hire is coming by showing this growth, I would try to show this growth unless I can't, unless it makes me look bad rather than good in front of these people. So those are the two reasons. It's much easier, and the incentive, power of incentives is why we always chase short-term things. Like that's the thing with life. Ganga has this question: can we relate engagement with retention? If then, what are the different success measures or KPIs to use? So Ganga, your engagement will always relate with retention, because like I said, if people are finding value in your product, they will retain. If people are not finding value in your product, they will not retain. Value is measured in terms of either them spending money or spending time. So if people are spending time, that means they're giving engagement, which means that it will lead to retention. So engagement, in fact, I love to say this, engagement is a leading indicator of retention. And retention is always a lagging indicator for whatever product you ship. So whenever you're launching, look at engagement, because it will show the user value, and then it will actually show what is the impact going to be on retention. For engagement, you just use like total time spent or total interactions. Those are the two metrics. Either like people are spending more time or they're interacting a lot, like they're adding more comments, likes, posts, and all that. Right? Those are two facets to analyze that. Ritik has this question: not all products are habit forming products. Some of them are user need based. So how do we understand engagement in such platforms? So Ritik, that is where you don't need to understand engagement. You need to understand retention. So the non-habit forming product like commerce platforms and like even productivity platform, there, like I covered, right? You are going to see what is the desired frequency for users for this particular need that my platform is solving. And if the frequency is every month user need to buy, every week user needs to buy, every quarter user needs to travel, depending on that need, I will put a goal for retention. And that if I'm hitting that goal, that means that I'm actually doing good on engagement and retention. Just checking for some more questions. Tini has this question: say product is built for a core value, say to deliver age aha moment, but users are experiencing aha moment from other feature or discovery. Is such a scenario, how should the business plan? See, great question, Tini, right? Like, in fact, Instagram, they built for check-ins and like some other product they built, and then they realized people were actually using it for uploading photos and sharing photos and all that. And that is when they realized that they need to build a photo sharing platform, and Instagram was born. So always be cognizant of the other use cases people are using your product for. And then you can possibly, use those, bring those moments in the aha moment. Now, sometimes what might happen is they actually go orthogonal to your business proposition. In that case, something like Slack, right? Slack was some other company. They were they built something for internal communication, and they realized this is something which is pretty good. So they just pivoted from their idea to Slack. So it's a call that your management has to take, but as long as the aha moments are not orthogonal to what you are already building as core value prop of the product, you can bring those aha moments and hook users using that. If they're orthogonal to your product, then you need to, maybe do a pivot or take a different call. Sachin has this question: is there any difference? Is there any difference between when we are building a SaaS product versus for India versus Bharat? If yes, then what should be the prospects while building a product for Bharat? Is it fair when we compare growth for product for Bharat versus India? I think all three great questions. I don't believe that the growth comparison should happen between India and Bharat, because both are very different markets in terms of ARPU, CAC, and everything else, right? But coming to your major question, which is like, is there any difference when you're building a SaaS product for India versus Bharat? There are three major differences. One is the English tax. You have to be very wary of, which is like when you're building for Bharat, vernacular is the way to go. The second is, discovery through voice or recommendations will work very differently for India versus Bharat, right? And the third is possibly video. If you can use video for onboarding or video for, educating users, video for like some other purposes, it's much easier to consume for people than a text or a, banner based interface. So voice vernac video is basically building for Bharat. And that's how you should think about it.
Deepak, let's take one last question and then we can close the session.
Sure. Mahesh, is this good question? Any good resources for psychological nudges and concepts that can be applied to the products? Yes, Mahesh. So actually, if you check Growth Catalyst, I have this, how do you use user psychology to build products, the onboarding, retention, and everything. They're like around, I've written some 10,000 words in 3 or 4 different essays. So that should give you a good start. But if you want to go beyond that, you can use 2 resources I found very, very insightful. One is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. He won Nobel Prize for behavioral psychology. It's an amazing book. The second is a speech by Charlie Munger on human judgment, right? He gave this like 25 years back. It's like there is PDF available for that talk as well. It's an amazing talk. It will give you the mental models in psychology and all those things. So yeah, just those 2 resources if you want to move beyond that, but start with my blog posts. Ankit, that's all from my side. Thanks for moderating, Ambika and Ankit.
Thank you so much, Deepak. I think we are all much wiser than when we started the session. I think the examples that you quoted also were very, very relatable. We've got some really nice comments, which you should take a look at now that you've done your fair bit of talking. Thank you so much to our lovely audience for joining, listening, and participating, as well as to those that stayed till the very end. A special thank you to you guys as well. We've launched a Zoom poll. We've got our feedback. Thank you very much. That'll really help us in planning our next session. With this, we've come to the end of the first ever edition of OneCast. And I'm happy to say it went really, really well from our side. And going by the feedback, I'm hoping that you guys enjoyed the session as well. We've got many, many more exciting speakers lined up. For that, we need you to follow Flipkart on LinkedIn and our other social media channels to know more about the next OneCast talk, as well as follow us for the latest updates about life and careers at Flipkart. For now, again, thank you, Ankit. Thank you, Deepak and team. And thank you to our audience once again. Until we see you again, please do take care of yourselves and stay safe.